Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmadu wa nusalli wa nusallimu ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd, and welcome to another video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel. And before we carry on, if I can request that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and that you like and share this video inshallah with anyone else who might benefit as well. And today's video we're covering Law, Empire and the Sultan by Samy Ayoub. Now this isn't actually my copy of the original book. Obviously the original book, if you have a look on Amazon, it's over £100, and I'm not paying that much to acquire a book which, although it is fantastic, it is actually only about 156 pages of solid reading. So we're not paying over £100 for that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to get the PDF, we're going to send it over to DocZoo, and they're going to make a book out of us, and they're going to send it to us as a printed book. And that's exactly what I did. And as you can see, I've got my notes on the book here as well, and I will share this on the Islamic Knowledge Telegram channel. So if you pop over to Telegram, type in @IK-Courses, you will see these notes, and they're pretty legible. At least you can see all the beneficial points in the book. Now this book, really important for Hanafis. It's all about the Ottoman Empire and what role the Hanafis gave to the Sultan in the late Hanafism tradition, wherein the Sultan was given, according to the author of this book by the way, a role to play in the actual madhab itself. Now, we did a review quite a while back on Guy Burak's book. It was called The Second Formation of Islamic Law, in which we spoke about how Guy Burak makes a very, you could say, really controversial claim that the Sultan was attempting to almost like infiltrate the madhab, infiltrate Islamic law, and this became like a really controversial argument. What this author tries to do, Samy Ayoub, is try to strike a balance. He goes somewhere in the middle when he says it wasn't that the Sultan, the Ottoman Sultan, was infiltrating the madhab. It was more like they were working together. The ulama and the Sultan were kind of working together. So he says Guy Burak, in his work The Second Formation of Islamic Law, the Hanafi school in the early modern Ottoman Empire, demonstrates the importance of the role of the chief mufti of the Ottoman Empire, demonstrates the importance of the role of the chief mufti of the Ottoman Empire in the process of legal change. The core contribution of Burak's work is his elucidation of how the Ottoman state, represented by the chief imperial jurisconsult, created an imperial canon to pursue desired legal change. Burak argues that the chief imperial jurisconsult was granted the authority to specify what texts should be incorporated into the imperial canon due to the hierarchical and centralized nature of the imperial religious judicial establishment. So it's really like a controversial claim, where in the standard Orientalist claim, that is, which is that the state was influencing what was going on in the legal tradition. Now this author kind of strikes a balance. He tries to get somewhere in the middle, and he mentions all of Burak's position, and he says this study revisits the state-centric perspective of Burak's evaluation of the Ottoman imperial canon. So Burak's book is very state-centric, whereas this book tries to strike a balance by saying that the ulama and Sultan were sort of working together. It wasn't like it wasn't that the Sultan was stepping over the ulama class. Rather, the ulama class were working together with the Sultan, and now they were allowing the Sultan's rulings to have a probative value inside the legal tradition itself of the Hanafi madhab. And we're going to single out, for example, scholars like Damad Effendi, Shurumbullali, Haskafi, etc., who all give reference to Sultan's Qanun, or the ruling given by the Sultan. So the Ottoman state appears in Burak's narrative as the sole defining aspect of the Hanafi school in the late period. Burak's convenient division between state-centric and non-state-centric jurists may explain some aspects of the local Hanafi traditions in Anatolia, Syria, Palestine and Egypt. However, these categories are challenged by the prominence of Ottoman Sultanic authority and imperial jurists in most legal scholarship by non-state appointed jurists and muftis. An alternative way of addressing this development, I believe, is to pinpoint the key change in the legal commitment of late Hanafism. So this author is really adamant to explain to us what is late Hanafism. It's a tradition within itself that adapts the madhab to legal change, and realities on the ground changing, or then you see that having an impact on the legal tradition itself. So the urf, the maslaha, the benefits of what we need to change on the reality on the ground, we will then see late Hanafis adopting those changes that need to be made. The acceptance of Hanafi juristic discourse as a whole, not just by individual Hanafi jurists, of a legislative role. This is the key point that he's trying to make in this book, that the Hanafis of the late period allowed a legislative role for the Ottoman Sultan and the assignment of certain probative value to its orders and edicts. I also contend that the local Hanafi traditions in Anatolia, Syria, Palestine and Egypt are part of the larger development of the late Hanafi tradition in the early modern period, with recognition of the Sultan's authority constituting a general feature of the madhab. A distinct feature of these local legal tradition is that they were influenced by local customs and social realities, generating vibrant discussion and controversies on a range of issues. I believe that the idea of a state madhab is a contradiction in terms, and this is the key point. The Hanafi madhab, this is the key difference between Burak and Samy Ayoub. The Hanafi madhab did not lose its authority structure to the Ottoman Sultan because of the merely structural interventions of the state through the appointment of muftis and judges. Burak's study overlooks the nature of the legal order which manifests in Islamic law in the concept of the madhab. i.e. the concept of the madhab itself allows for us to kind of give the Sultan a bit of authority, and that, as we'll come to just now, is really problematic for scholars like Hallaq. The Ottoman Sultan's interventions in juristic discourse were legitimated and sustained by Hanafi jurists themselves, who sought to create a legal order in which state policies would be taken into consideration. So this is the key argument in the book. And if we look at the contents page, again, the contents page is really interesting because he is covering a lot of what you would see is very, very relevant to Hanafis, right? I don't know if the contents page is at the end of the book or at the start of the book. I don't know, maybe my copy, because it's one of those. In any case, right, he discusses, you could say, it starts off with an introduction, and then straight after that he'll start going into Ibn Nujaym, the importance of Ibn Nujaym, and then the book from page 72 onwards discusses Shurumbulali, Hassan ibn Ammar al-Shurumbulali. He then discusses Damad Effendi, as we'll see just now. He discusses Damad Effendi in the coming pages. Here it is, Abdurrahman Sheikh Zada, basically, Damad Effendi. And then Haskafi is also discussed. And then after that, and this is really, really a powerful section, from page 96 onwards, he discusses Ibn Abidin. And it's a really, really beneficial introduction to Ibn Abidin and his Radd al-Muhtar. Really fantastic, like even his references, he even makes charts, Ibn Abidin's sources. And for when it comes to Ibn Nujaym, he even kind of makes bar charts over who Ibn Nujaym references the most. So you can see here references to Ibn Nujaym's opinions. He mentions how much Ibn Abidin relies upon Ibn Nujaym himself. He considers Ibn Nujaym to be the father of late Hanafism. In fact, he says that Ibn Abidin refers to Ibn Nujaym three times on every page in Radd al-Muhtar, approximation on average. Then at the end, he discusses the Majallah, and this part is really, really fantastic, the impact of the Majallah, and he goes into detail. So on page 28, he says, and this, by the way, this inculcation of the Sultanic edicts into the Hanafi madhab, he says it kind of really, really kicked off in the 17th and 18th century Ottoman period, and that is when you will notice. So on page 28, he mentions this. So if you go to page 28, you will see he says that this book comprises 4 chapters. The first chapter starts with a discussion of Ibn Nujaym's legal writings and his contributions to the late Hanafi tradition. It explores the characteristics, influences and authority structure of the late Hanafi scholarship as expressed in Ibn Nujaym's works. I examine how Ibn Nujaym relates late Hanafi authority and positions to the early opinions of the school. I argue that his writings forge the backdrop against which later Hanafi works of the 17th to 19th century were articulated. As a consequence, Ibn Nujaym is a central figure in the crystallization of an Ottoman late Hanafi tradition. And then he continues onwards here as well. He says the second chapter examines the process by which Hanafi jurists in the 17th and 18th centuries authorized the edicts and orders of the Ottoman Sultan as part of their juristic discourse and reasoning. I focus on the following jurists, and that is Shurumbulali, Sheikh Zada, Al-Haskafi, and also he also has Hamid ibn Ali al-Imadi, one of the later Hanafi scholars who came from a very, very important family as well. I argue that the generation of these scholars was the first to incorporate Ottoman state edicts and sultanic orders into Hanafi fiqh works. At this point, late Hanafi jurisprudence. So he continues, really fantastic discussion, honestly, even if you might not agree with certain conclusions, but it really is beneficial, especially his discussion on Majallah. He explains how what Majallah was really doing was showing how the madhab is quite literally a discursive tradition, that we can use the tradition itself to instigate change and to allow the madhab to adapt to legal change. And so he discusses how if you keep saying that the Majallah was a response to modernity, it keeps making it look like that the madhab changes because of external reasons, whereas that is not the case. It is actually, the reality is that the madhab within itself has the ability to change. And so although the book is fantastic, obviously the idea that the Sultan is given some ability to have an impact on the law does not sit very well with one of the most authoritative writers in our times, which is Wa'il Hallaq. No doubt, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he is quite an authority on some of these topics, especially when it comes to Islamic governance. So here he has a full critique in his book, The Radical Separation of Powers. He has a discussion on Ayoub's book, Samy Ayoub, and he says Samy Ayoub argues for a middle position in contemporary scholarship, effectively rejecting Burak's sweeping generalizations, as well as the stance on the other side of the spectrum that legal authority in Islamic law is epistemically divorced from political authority, and legal knowledge is the exclusive domain of the jurists, right? And this is obviously something that Hallaq considers to be the correct reason. Now Hallaq is going to refute this and try to prove this very point, that legal authority in Islamic law is epistemically divorced from political authority. Ayoub begins his argument with the assertion that legal Hanafi legal commentaries. So he continues, and one of his main problems, by the way, is the fact that Ayoub referred to the Ottoman state, and he doesn't like the fact that he used the word state. That's not a good way to use it as well. And yeah, I mean, look, I won't lie to you, there are some points within Ayoub's writings, the way he words it, which makes it look like almost as though the Sultan was, like one point in Samy Ayoub's book, he actually says that my book casts doubt on whether we should characterize Islamic law as jurist law. Obviously that's not going to sit well with Hallaq, who is probably one of the biggest proponents of this idea of Islamic law being jurist law, that it is not the Sultan who makes the law, it is the scholars. Ayoub argues that this is effectively an Ottoman innovation. He says that what Hallaq is arguing is that every time the Hanafis were allowing the Sultan to have a role to play in the legal tradition was never ever something beyond what fiqh had already given to him pre-Ottoman times, which is siyasa shar'iyya. All of this could fall under siyasa shar'iyya. So I don't know, you can make your own conclusions about some of this as well. He says that Ayoub argues that this was effectively an Ottoman innovation or a Hanafi turn from a previous doctrine of the school aiming to accommodate Ottoman policies, but this argument is inaccurate. As a matter of principle, Ayoub recognizes some elements of the principle's practice, but does not think to explore it as a juristic principle par excellence. For a full acknowledgement of the principle would run diametrically opposite to his thesis. The principle, having endured for centuries in the life of the Hanafi school, takes it for granted that the Caliph, or in his stead the Sultan, has the power of judicial delegation or deputization, capturing the range of doctrines prevailing in his school. For the 4 centuries prior, the pre-Ottoman Hanafi jurist Ibn Mazah offers a list of the ruler's prerogatives in judicial appointments, capturing the principle that gives rise to these executive powers. So Hallaq's arguing even pre-Ottomans this did happen. It was just that, as he says here as well, the Ottoman state was a bit more active and it was more rigorous in this. Again, you can make your deductions of what you think between these two books. I don't think there's a massive difference between what Samy Ayoub is saying and what Hallaq is saying in the grand scheme of things, that is. But I'll let you read it and I'll let you benefit from both books. We'll make a separate video on the radical separation of powers on another day. But for now, have a look at this book. I think you'll really benefit and you'll really enjoy this book. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you do access these notes as well. I think you'll enjoy just having read of some of these notes. There's some really interesting fawaid and beneficial points in there as well, even with regards to Ibn Abidin, which I'd never seen before, to be honest with you. Even having read the book of Ibn Abidin, decent parts of it, this book does definitely delve into certain things which we don't usually look at. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do give it a like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I hope you join me on the next one. Jazakumullah khair wa ahsan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.